Usually in these videos about Subnautica, we talk about creatures that you can pretty easily observe, see in the game, look at their behavior, how they look, where they're located, and all other kinds of information about them. However, today we will be looking at a species that never once makes physical appearance in the game, and yet, because of the implications and their actions, are incredibly important to the overall narrative of the game. That's right, the main topic of this video will be the race of precursor aliens, I suppose you could say, who are responsible for most of the architecture built in the game, the construction of warpers and the mechanical spiders, and the capture of the Sea Emperor Leviathan. Now, as per usual, before we start, I need to warn you that this video will contain spoilers to the story of Subnautica, so if you do not want to have that spoiled to you, I would recommend clicking off and coming back later. I also need to preface this one with saying that because the precursors never make a physical appearance in the game, a lot of the information in this video will be purely theoretical and based on small hints and pieces of evidence which could often be interpreted in different ways. Anyways, with that out of the way, climb on some dry land, get your scanner ready because there's a lot of interesting stuff to look at, and let's go. Now, first of all, what we do know is that the race of precursors was a highly advanced and ancient, undoubtedly, alien race which was able to travel between galaxies and entire solar systems that arrived on the planet 4546b, the one where Subnautica takes place, approximately 1000 years ago. The reason of their arrival was the bacterium, which had infected their species and has caused death in millions over multiple worlds that they inhabited. In fact, they are the ones responsible for bringing the virus to the Subnautica planet. Now, while we do not know what they look like, we can assume that their lifespan was most likely several times that of humans, as in one databank entry, a 96-year-old precursor was considered to be very young, and that same individual lived to near 700 Earth years before it was infected with the coronavirus and its consciousness was stored. On that same note, we can also probably assume that they superficially prolonged their lifespans with genetic and biomechanical augmentations, as they are clearly seen having perfected this technology with the construction of the warpers. Now, in terms of their actions in the outer ranges of the solar systems that they inhabited, we do know that they have scavenged and gathered a lot of their technologies from other races, as this is stated upon scanning the warper. And also, in one of their bases, you can actually find multiple relics which resemble human technology, including a sword from Earth, showing that the precursors have definitely visited the planet before and could have even potentially made contact with humans, considering some of their symbology is resembling that of old symbols used by civilizations on Earth. It is also possible that their language has somewhat influenced the formations of old Earth-like languages, considering the fact that your PDA is able to translate some of their language without any prior contact, and also the fact that the written language is somewhat resemblant of real-life Hebrew, even though this one is kind of far-fetched. Now, in terms of what they did particularly on planet 4546b, we do know that originally they arrived approximately 1000 years ago, searching for a cure to the bacterium, having created the disease research facility and the alien thermal plant, as well as the quarantine enforcement platform to help them in their research. In the disease research facility, they would test the bacterium on native creatures looking for any resemblance of a cure, and this was also the place that they used to construct the warpers, which would be used to defend them from hostile fauna, eradicate instances of the bacterium, and keep watch over their bases. It is also likely that somewhere around this time they discovered the gargantuan fossils which can be found in the Lost River and started looking into them and researching the remnants. From the alien thermal plant, they clearly powered up all of the other precursor bases, utilizing the magma energy and power stored in the lava castle. Of course, as we know, the quarantine enforcement platform was simply constructed to prevent any unauthorized vehicle landing or leaving the planet, which also became the unfortunate demise of Degassi, Aurora, and eventually Sunbeam. Funny enough, the Precursors also built 3 separate sanctuary caches, one in the Deep Sparse Reef, second in the northern Bloodkelp zone, and finally in a meteor crater inside the dunes, which were meant to serve as a failsafe in case the bacterium was ever unleashed onto the planet, and inside of which they should be able to store their consciousness if their physical body was to give out. We know that at some point the Precursors discovered that the Sea Emperor Leviathan has somehow got to be immune to the bacterium, at which point they were able to capture a live specimen as well as several of its eggs and begin experimentation on them. They, however, could not hear the telepathic messages of the Emperor the same way the player does, as we learned from the Emperor in the later stages of the game. After capturing an egg of a sea dragon Leviathan, possibly to look for ways to hatch the Sea Emperor's eggs, this creature attacked one of their bases, causing it to collapse and break down onto the seabed, killing 7 of the precursors within, and unfortunately causing the previously contained Chirobacterium to spill out onto the ecosystem. Unfortunately, after this process of spreading was pretty quickly forcing the precursors to preserve their consciousness in the data hubs, even though there is only evidence of a single precursor doing this, and now no more live physical precursors remain anywhere on the planet. Now, that is basically all of the information we are given outright that we can be somewhat certain about. There are a few things that we can theorize about both their appearance and their behavior. However, considering some of the facts can lead you to believe different things, a lot of people seem to be kind of split on what to believe and what is most likely not true. For example, according to a data download, the precursors were born or grown from a seed, which could suggest plant-like or even fungi-like biology. However, this could also refer to something like a computer program or maybe even an egg, suggesting that they were raised in broods. Second of all, talking about their appearance, considering some of their architecture, it could lead you to believe that they were much taller than your average human, especially regarding the height over the tables in the disease research facility, which would most likely, if compared to a surgical table, go up to about their waist. However, on the other hand, a lot of the data banks and the places you interact with the artifacts at are somewhat lower than you would expect, which would necessarily cause them to have to bend over to reach these, which doesn't make sense either. So from those, you could assume that they were shorter than your average human. In terms of movement, it is of note that all of the bases contain only ramps, which could lead you to believe that they most likely had more of a slug type movement, which would make getting upstairs rather difficult. However, this can also just have been a stylistic choice used for when they were transferring materials on throughout the bases. We could also make the assumption that they were either land-dwelling or amphibian, considering how integrated their bases are with the surrounding water, but also the fact that the water is never intentionally inside of the base. Based on some of the colors in the bases, we could also probably make the guess that the color spectrum that they can see is somewhat resemblant to that of regular humans. However, that is purely just speculation. And it is also very likely that they had some sort of appendages which allowed for at least a certain level of manipulation or grabbing, considering the construction of alien artifacts and some of the machinery that we can find in the individual bases. It is also possible, based on several data entries, that the precursors may have been able to communicate in some form of telepathy. However, this could also be disproved by the fact that they seem to have been unable to communicate with the Emperor, which clearly uses telepathic communication in any way. Finally, we can also make the assumption that their bodies were at least partially biological, considering the fact that they could actually get infected with the Chirobacterium themselves, and of course, having yourself be uploaded into a databank entry if your body is already fully mechanical wouldn't really make a lot of sense. Anyways guys, that is all the information I was able to gather on the precursors. I hope you enjoyed the video. If there's any fact that I missed or any theory that you would like to go into, please make sure to leave it down in the comments below. I would love to read it, and I'm sure other people who are curious about this subject would love to as well. If you liked the video, maybe consider leaving a like, commenting, or subscribing. All of those would be very much appreciated. I want to wish you a beautiful rest of the day, and I'll see you in whatever next video I make. Bye bye.